Hi friends, my name's Darren, I'm an alcoholic. This meeting's about to get started. Came into Alcoholics Anonymous in Sydney in 1993, and a very large gentleman by the name of Mick from Campsie helped me a lot. I moved to the Northern Beaches, and Marion from Cremorne loved me back to life, and Waggy Bill made me laugh on the way to the Neutral Bay meeting every Saturday, and moved to the eastern suburbs and Bede from Ramwick, and many other older sober members. Jimmy the judge from the Northern Beaches while I was over there as well taught me that we needed to do the steps physically, mentally and spiritually. We stand on the soldiers of giants here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and many of them are here with us today, which is wonderful. I looked at the registration list about a week ago. There were over 50 members registered with more than 40 years of sobriety. Most of them are here today. Obviously, we can't hear from you all. There's a job in Alcoholics Anonymous that I don't envy. The next two people that I'm about to introduce have that job. Bev from Barble Park and John from Woolloomooloo will chair this meeting today, and I will hand you over to them.
Thanks, Darren.
Hi everyone, my name is Bev and I am an alcoholic, and my home group is Leichhardt's Saturday Night Group.
Oh, you want to read it? Oh, yeah, my name's John, alcoholic, member of Woolloomooloo on Friday night, and been there every Friday night for 32 years.
Okay, this is the preamble for Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of people who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And can I now ask Don from Barble Park to read how it works?
Good afternoon, Don's my name. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to read from the book that's been with me all my sober journey. From chapter 5, page 58. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Our opening speaker this afternoon will share some recollections of early AA members. Could we please invite Dick L from Saratoga, New South Wales, to speak? Dick will share for 15 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody, and how did we enjoy this morning? What a wonderful presentation. Well done. I'm going to speak to you largely about 2 individuals in my life. I'm Dick, I'm an alcoholic. Should start there. My sobriety date is the 21st of June 1968. My sponsor was Gordon from Wauchope and Penrith, and my mentor was Father Tom Dunlea, and I'm going to explain about the depth of my association with Father Tom. Now, that was quite unusual because I'm a Protestant from East Belfast, and he's a Catholic priest from Tipperary, and we normally don't mix. But I'm going to tell you why that was very special in my life, and I still treasure the memory of that wonderful man and the work that he did for the suffering alcoholic. You heard earlier that red-haired Betty was a member of the Sutherland group. Well, in 1969 and 1970, I was secretary of that group. Other members were Father Tom, Les Fardy, who was an AA counsellor later at Blacktown. His brother was Reg from Waitara. And we had Black Pat, and Mad Pat, who were all members of our group. It was a wonderful group. Now, I could have joined Cronulla, Miranda, Caringbah, wasn't as strong as it is today there, or I could have gone to Ramsgate and heard Stan. But I didn't. I joined Sutherland in the old Scout Hall. It was a dreadful old hall. And my wife, Marion, has been making sandwiches at AA for 56 years. So give her a clap. And that means that red-haired Betty, who you heard about this morning, the first lady member in Australia, was eating Marion sandwiches in 1969, 1970. So there you go. Now, I'm not going to talk about my drinking. Broken Hill Jack said this: if you do miss this, you won't miss the other. And all of us know what the other's like. And I've had 2 goes at the other. I came here in 1960 from Ireland. I was sent in a sort of a family deportation. Fancy sending an alcoholic to Sydney in 1960 to cure his drinking. There was no hope. I played rugby at Randwick. I was in the first grade squad. 8 of them went to South Africa. I got a couple of games. And within 18 months, I was kicked out of the club in shame. And I never want to forget that. But I got worse than that. I descended to being a derelict in the inner suburbs. I know every back lane off King Street, Newtown, Redfern, Surrey Hills, the back lanes, everywhere. And I didn't eat and I didn't wash and I wasn't hygienic. And I met my wife, Marion. And I met her in a club when I was pretty drunk. And I was a smooth talker at that time with a few drinks in. And so I got her number and then I rang her and she had told her mother, if that Irish bloke rings up, tell him I'm not here. And last October, we've been married 60 years together. Marion has been a wonderful supporter of me and of me going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Never, ever objected going to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm going to go, I had a second sort of descent into dereliction, married. A special ed teacher at Penrith, a lot of stolen generation children. I loved my job. I was the choir master, I was the sports master, and I couldn't get home from school. I would get home about 1:30, generally with some other people in tow. And Marion would wonder what this was all about. And it got worse until one night it culminated in violence. And I hate violence. But that happened in our home on the 20th of June 1968. And I went up to the playground of the school the next day, and an Aboriginal boy called Russell, with an IQ of less than 70, told me, "Mr. Love, you've been on the piss again." So he knew what my problem was. Marion went to a red telephone box where Lauren used to have a meeting there in the Anglican Church, before the first house on 2nd Avenue, Kingswood. And she went to the red telephone box and rang 000 and was in tears. And she spoke to the right person. And that person said, "Marion, come back to the telephone box in 1 hour." And she did, and a man called Gordon spoke to her. And Gordon picked us up. He had a searchlight to get the number on the side of the curb. And in the front seat was a man called Tow Truck Barry. Some of the oldies will remember Barry. And Marion and I get in the back seat of the big Fairlane. I quite liked that, being in the Fairlane. And at Parramatta, we picked up a lady called Breathless Beryl. She had emphysema. But, and off we go to Ride meeting. And that was the most telling experience of my life to date at that time, because I heard what I was suffering from. Broken Hill Jack was there, Mudgee Jack was there, Herb from Hunters Hill, Olga and Val, some of the older people will remember them. And I knew what was wrong with me, and I've been sober since that night, and that's 56 years ago. So I've got to be careful of the time. So Gordon was a remarkable man. He came from a very wealthy family at Wauchope. It's now Timber Town, but it was the family timber business before then. Gordon had been a pilot at the end of the Second War. He was a black sheep, like I was, of my family. And he came down to Sydney trying to find a way out of his drinking. And he went to Christchurch St. Lawrence. I was talking to somebody about it this morning, down near Central. And AA had an office there, but they'd been kicked out. And he found a cleaner. And the cleaner told him where there was a meeting. There was only 6 meetings in Sydney then. There was a meeting at Mossman. And he went to Mossman on the tram, and he met a man called Charles from Rose Bay. He was a director of David Jones. And that man gave him a big book. And with it, he went back up to Wauchope, and he lent that book to 6 men, 2 of them publicans, Snowy Mac from Telegraph Point and a man called Ferris from Port Macquarie Hotel, and 4 other men. And none of those men ever had another drink in their lives. Of those 6 people who were lent that big book, they all died sober. Gordon didn't. He was a bender drinker. He was a tormented soul at times, but he was a tremendous member of AA. And he also founded or co-founded 6 meetings that are still going today. Penrith, Wentworth Falls, Glenbrook, Port Macquarie, Wauchope, and Canwell on the Central Coast. So he did great work, and we were part of that. We were adopted, our family, by that family. And Gordon's wife, Dawn, died last year, aged 96. And I'll just tell you briefly about one other thing about that family. Gordon had 3 children, and Denise was a nurse, and she had been married to an Austrian ski instructor who won a gold medal at Innsbruck. He got killed in a car accident coming back from the Snowy. And I'd been around about a year. I'd never driven in my life. Thank goodness, somebody'd be dead. And Gordon said, "Can you afford $21 a month?" And I couldn't, but I said yes. So he gave me Denise's car. She wasn't putting oil in the engine or anything. He took me down to the finance company in High Street, Penrith, $21 a month, signed over the papers. I wasn't to realise that she carried a resentment against me for 47 years. So I went to Dawn's 90th birthday. Marion and I went to Dawn's 90th birthday a couple of years ago, and she confronted me. And we're good mates today, but I had to admit that. So I have to watch the time. I will tell you quickly about one day Gordon took me in his car, a new Fairlane, and we go to a big house in Sylvania. And those of you who might have known Big Arthur from Brooklyn, he used to live at Sylvania, and he used to have his leases on the Georges River. That clogged up or got difficult with imperfections in the river, and he moved up to Brooklyn. And so we go to he was on the drink. Now, Big Arthur had hands like dinner plates, and he was 6'5", and he was cranky when he needed a drink. And we put him in the car, and Gordon went round to the boot, got a bottle of brandy, and we nursed him over to Hyderbray. He went upstairs, he was put to bed, we left, and Arthur decided he was still thirsty. So he got off the bed with the bed on his back. He clumped down the stairs of Hyderbray, and he walked a kilometre and a half to the pub at Strathfield Station. And the police came and got him, and he got sober, and he didn't have another drink for 47 years. What a story. I want to go on a bit and talk about Father Tom. He was my mentor. I knew him from 3 sources. When he was at Boys Town, he was a member, as I said, of the group at Sutherland. I also went to his presbytery, and I went through the steps with him the first time that I went through the steps. And he would talk about catharsis, about getting all the bile out, get all the rubbish out. He would talk about that. And then he would talk about the general natures of things. He would never want to humiliate anybody by disclosing things that don't need to be disclosed. He was an imperfect person like a lot of us, but he was a great encourager. He had a wonderful humanity. And I think there were 3 things that he had. He had compassion, intellect, and a wonderful Irish sense of humour. He was a mighty, mighty man, and I loved him. So that's Father Tom. Now, the other place we went to on a Sunday night after he'd been a priest, he had moved down to South Hurstville as parish priest, and after his priestly duties, he would go to Coronation Hall in Harncliffe, and he would tell about Greek history, literature, and he would just relax. And I went to his funeral at St. Mary's Cathedral. It's the biggest funeral that's ever been held in St. Mary's Cathedral. So he had a big influence on my life. So I'm going to go on now to Newcastle. I went to Newcastle and my AA world expanded. I was a member of the civic group, and in those years we used to sit in the mayor's chambers up on the first floor of the beautiful town hall in Newcastle. And the chairperson would sit in the mayor's leather chair, big leather chair. It was beautiful. And I met some great friends there, but I'm going to tell you about 3 in particular. There were 3 guys there, all wharfies, called Isher, Bill, Titch and Arch. And after I'd been there, I'd now moved on to become a manager of a financial services company in Hunter Street. And after about 6 months, I was given a company car, a Holden Kingswood. And Isher found out that I got the company car. And he came into the office, walked straight through, ignored the staff, opened the back door where the car was parked, and he said, "Dick, we've got wheels." And I think that was on a Wednesday. And he said, "Be ready Friday, 3 o'clock. We're going to Coonabarabran." So Marion was at home with a 2-year-old, Sean. Wayne wasn't yet born. He was born in Newcastle. My son's here with me today. Thank you for coming, Wayne, from Singapore. And anyway, so Titch and Arch and Isherbill are ready on Friday. And I've told Marion we're going away for the weekend, not just up to Coonabarabran. So we're halfway across the Pilliga Scrub late on the Friday afternoon. And Isher said, "Stop the car." Oh, I do what I'm told. And he gets a reviver and he puts it over a stake. And he said, "Some poor drover might need this." And so I got back in the car and off we go. And we go to Coonabarabran, and the linesman of the county council was Stuart. He's dead now. His wife Betty was a nurse. Made us a great baked dinner, and then we had a meeting round their kitchen table. Saturday night we go to Mudgee. Sunday night we're at the Cross. Little Jack Fitz with his bow tie was the secretary. It used to be a mighty meeting in the outpatients of the Cross. Barry would be there, that was mentioned this morning. And when I got back home, about 2:15 on Monday morning, but when I handed that car in, it had done 100,000 more miles than any other manager. But I was blessed because I had a managing director who heard that I was going to AA, and he gave me a phone call and he said, "Dick, you can leave work any time you need to do AA's work." And he honoured that commitment to me. And he died last year, 92, and I kept in touch with him. He was a wonderful boss. So that was Newcastle. I do want to have, I don't know what the time is. How long have I got? How long? 1 minute. Very, very quickly. I want to talk about the Cessnock connection. And for those of you that are in the city here, I would like to, Cessnock's 70th birthday is on the 14th of May coming up. See if you can get there. Why it's important. There was a Presbyterian minister in Cessnock called the Reverend Lackey, and there was a first member called Cessnock Bob, a coal miner, and he got back on the grog. And his mother and the Reverend Lackey went to the Presbyterian Church Hall for a year and read chapter 5 at 8 o'clock every week for a whole year. And then he came back and he was sober the rest of his life. Dr. Bill Spence was the first non-alcoholic trustee from Cessnock. A local doctor, Dr. Wendy, was a great encourager in that place. And Len, who's here today, Len had worked at the jail for about 18 years, and myself and Eric, who's here today, Ross Conchie when he was alive, Ross's daughter's here today, we would go up there and we'd have 3 meetings on a Friday in the jail, and we'd have a big feed at the end of it. And I just want to mention that group and the place itself, it used to be 20,000 people, all underground miners, all smoke, fights out the front of the pub. It was a terrific place, and I like roughish people, so that was good. No, okay. Yep. I will finish on this. You've heard that before, but I do want to read you. Father Tom's favourite poem was by a Cardinal Newman, who was a cardinal of the Anglican Church, didn't like the hierarchy, joined the Catholic Church and didn't like the hierarchy. And I think he might have been a bit like Father Tom. But this is the evening prayer, and I'm just going to leave you with this. O Lord, support us all day long of this troublous life, until the shades lengthen and the busy world is hushed. The fever of life is over and our work is done. Then, Lord, in thy mercy, grant us safe lodging, a holy rest, and peace at the last. And you're going to be excited to hear the other speakers that are coming after me. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Look, we want to have as many people as possible to participate in today's meeting, and each of the members will be asked to share for 6 minutes with the small bell. We'll give you a minute to go. To save time, we both will call a speaker and we'll give you 2 names, so the second one can follow on quickly after the first speaker. So I'll hand it over to my co-host.
We have Alan on the stage, and if we can get...
Into the mic.
Oh, sorry. Kate R.
It's okay. It'll be the second speaker. Please go ahead, Alan. Welcome.
Yeah. Is she? Oh, right, she's here. Go.
So we've got all of that sorted. I'm Alan, I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date is 7:30 a.m. 13th of June 1967, which means that I'm 57 and 10 months. And there's one young boy here that used to go to my steps meeting, and he was counting days, and he would insist that I count days with him as well. So it's 21,130 days. I was fortunate enough that I was in Akron in 1980, and I met the oldest sober member there at that time. Her name was Joan, and she was about this tall, maybe this tall. And they were making this big fuss over her. This is our oldest sober member. And she knew Dr. Bob, and she knew Bill, and she got me by the side because she hadn't seen a bloke from Australia before with a funny accent. And she said, "I'll tell you what an old-timer is. There's 2 requirements to be an old-timer. First and foremost, don't effing die. And then, of course, don't drink." And when I came into AA in 67, June 67, there was only one steps meeting in Sydney, that was in Gordon, and it had only just started. And the next steps meeting didn't start until the 18th of June 1976 at Guildford. And there's a young bloke here who's only 53, shaking his head because he was there, and there's another young lady over here that knows all about it as well. And that steps meeting is still going. And I was at a meeting the other day, and somebody was talking about steps 6 and 7 in the big book. And there's another young fellow up here who's only about 35 years, calls them the bang bang steps, because in the big book they take up 13 lines. It's beautiful. I love doing the steps 6 and 7 out of the big book. 6 and 7 in the 12 and 12, 13 pages. Step 6 starts off, this is the step that separates the men from the boys. Step 7, the last paragraph of step 7, when you get home tonight, pull your big book down off the shelf, blow the dust off it. The last paragraph of step 7 talks about the first and the second step. What's it doing hiding in the 7th step? I didn't start doing the steps until I was almost 9 years sober. And for those first 9 years, I was a dry drunk. It was only when I started to do the steps that I got the beautiful promises. There's 2 lots of promises in AA. Page 15 in the 12 and 12. When you've got the book down, have a read of page 15 as well. And it's the beautiful promises are there. Underneath it, the next paragraph tells you why we do something funny called the traditions. And Dick was talking about some old timers, and one of them who I often quote is Campsie Mick. And Mick used to say lots and lots of stuff. But what he did say, you go to meetings to hear what happens to people that don't go to meetings. There was some funny old fellow out there sitting on the door yesterday with a red volunteer shirt on, because there's 3 legs to this fellowship. The steps, which is what we're all here for, recovery. Then we've got the next one, the traditions, unity. Then we've got the other one, service and the concepts. And if we take one of those legs away, we're not here because the circle collapses. And that's one thing we don't want. So we need to do the 3 legs. We need to do the 3 legs. And when I came into AA that very first night, and I can still remember my first night at Guildford, they gave me a promise. And that promise is on page 181, Dr. Bob's story, last paragraph. And in that, Dr. Bob guarantees that if you spend half of your time within the fellowship, he will guarantee you sobriety. That's not a bad guarantee from the other co-founder. And on the other page, page 180, in italics, and there's a young gentleman here that told me, because I'm not real well educated with stuff, that if it's in italics, it's very important. And there he tells why we're all here today. He says because he was the first fellow that spoke my language and told me what was wrong with me. The program works. Don't drink, go to meetings, do the steps. May the force be with you.
Have we got Kate? Kate, oh, yeah.
Oh, here we are.
Sorry, there were 2 KRs, so I wasn't sure. I'm
right.
completely surprised that I'm
we gonna
up
ask
here. Anyway, my name's Kate and I'm an adult alcoholic. And it isn't me.
Could I just ask Lenny from Cessnock to Come on.
No, not yet. Go ahead.
So I keep going? Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of ushering as well, so thanks, Jackie. Thanks for doing that. So welcome, everybody. I can hardly see you, but welcome all to the newcomers. I'm be 48 next year. No. So this is really, what gets my heart is how AA has grown since I've been here. I was 25. I'm 74 now, which I can't cope with, but anyway, that's what I am. And I never thought I'd reach 30. And when I came in, like, I'm not an old timer yet, but, you know, if you hang around, you'll be an old timer. That's what I said. So, you know, when I came here, they used to talk about, you know, you've got to walk the walk before you talk the talk. And that used to blow me. I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand a lot. I still don't. But I think what that means is that, you know, in order to be up here talking, I need to have done the walking and have lived experience in recovery. And when I first came here at 25, and I don't know whether Di from Balmain is in there, but she was 2 years when I first came here. I think she's 50 this year. And she was the first person that I actually related to. And I related to her because A, she was a woman, and B, she was young. And back in the day, in the 70s, there weren't many women, there weren't many young women, and there certainly weren't many lesbians around then. And I came out in my first year in recovery. The first thing I realised was that I was a lesbian. And I was rejected by, I'm saying this honestly, I was rejected by my first sponsor, who was a well-known person back in the day, because I was a lesbian. So there was a lot of misogyny, there was a lot of homophobia, and there were a bunch of us women that came into the program, and we kind of made stands. And I probably made a lot of enemies back in the day, because I'm very direct, I'm very honest, and I'm very direct. But what the fruits of that kind of work that we did then to try and make AA more open are bearing fruit today, because we've got, I met a guy yesterday, Pete, I think his name was Pete or John, he spoke at the continuous meeting, and I didn't recognise him, but he recognised me, and we met at the first, he's 48, almost 48 too, we met at the first gay meeting. And now, you know, all these years later, AA is a broad church, if I can use that term. You know, we have everybody in here. Everybody is welcome. It doesn't matter your sexuality, your gender, whether you've got one leg or three legs. It doesn't really matter. Like, the acceptance of people, because we're here because we're addicts and alcoholics. We're not here because I'm this shape or I've got red hair or black hair or whatever. And that's what I really love about AA. And I'll finish on this. The thing that I've learned in my recovery, and I've had a lot of things happen to me in recovery, some life-threatening, some people know about my journey. It's been pretty horrendous at times, but I've never picked up a drink or a drug. I've gone to meetings, I've done my service, I've put AA at the fulcrum, and as I've gotten older in recovery, my 3 words of my mantra is, I don't know. So, I mean, I feel like I know less now than when I first came in. And if I have this sense of not knowing, every day is like an adventure. Every day I wake up and I don't know what's going to happen. And I went for a run this morning because I'm training for that half marathon. I'm still doing them. And this poor young woman, she'd fallen over and had broken her wrist. Now, she never got up this morning doing her run along Malabar thinking she was going to end up in an ambulance. And I wake up in the morning never knowing. All I know is I'm not going to pick up a drink or a drug today, and the rest is a mystery. And I love that. I love having a mysterious day. So if you're new or near new, I implore you to come back, because the oldies like us, we're moving on and we're making space for the rest of you. So please keep coming back, all you young ones, please, because without you, there'll be no AA. It's not about us anymore, it's about you. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And as Lenny comes to the microphone, we are going to call Maybe you want to know?
After Lenny, we'll call Jan from WA, please.
I'm Lenny and I'm an alcoholic. Good to be here with all you lovely people. And I do need a bit of help. I'm just getting over vertigo. But AA members give you a lot of sympathy. They said it's just a flashback to your old LSD days. So anyway, and I'd like to say a special thanks to Michael from the Cessnock group who drove me down here as well. Thanks, Mick. I still like you. And my sobriety date's 12th of May 1974. I was 25-year-old. I hit a rock bottom. Thank you. And I hit a rock bottom. I believe to get sober, we've got to hit that rock bottom. And rock bottom's not jail, and it's not Skid Row. It's in there when I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it tells me on the first page of chapter 3, we've got to fully concede to our innermost selves that we're alcoholics. It doesn't say to magistrates, parole, husbands or wives. And I'm grateful to the police for helping me hit me rock bottom. I didn't plan it as quick as they did. And I'm 103 kilos now. I was 53 kilos when I got sober. I was on the Skid Row weight loss plan. It works. It's very similar to the amphetamine weight loss plan. But they both cost more than Jenny Craig. Did alcohol cost you more than money? That's when it's a problem, right? And I hit that rock bottom, and I believe God puts the right people in the right place at the right time. The copper that belted me the night before called me out of the cell, and he said, "You're not a bad person sober, but every time you're drunk, you're nothing but a pest." He said, "Why don't you do something about your drinking?" And in 1974, all the Skid Row people used to get picked up and put in the cells overnight, and I was in there with them again. And he said to me, and when the cops start calling you by your first name too, you know you've bonded with them. He said, "Those people in there, you're looking down at them, and you're in on the same charge as them again." He said, "There's your future." Then he took me out in front of the old Newcastle police station. He said, "The white building up the road is a detox centre. James Fletcher Hospital, they've got a detox centre. Go and do something about your drinking." And I said, "I'll think about it." And 3 days later, I come out of a blackout at the Salamander Bay Hotel. I couldn't work out where the ships had gone from Newcastle Harbour or anything. I didn't realise I was in a different town. And and I was with a couple of other Vietnam vets. And I told them what had happened. And I said, "The cop said something about detox. What's that?" And they were drunk. They said, "Go down there, Lenny. It done us the world of good." I said, "How did it help you?" And they said, "We haven't touched heroin since." But they were the right people for me. And on the 12th of May 1974, they took me down totally defeated. And I went in there and they said, "Do you want to drink or use drugs again?" I said, "No." I said, "But I don't know if I can go the rest of my life without." And they said, "You don't have to. There's a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. They teach people to stay sober just for today. Don't put a life sentence on this," right? And I did the detox program. And then I did a rehab program, and I got taken to outside meetings. Ever grateful to members today and in the past that have gone into the institutions carrying the message there, because the message was carried to me there. And the biggest thing I found out from my first meetings, I'm not the only one, and there's a way out. All right, so I reckon we're in the right place. Anyway, cut a long story short, I've stayed sober all that time, but for the first 4 years I thought, I don't need to work about the steps, I don't need God. I used to tell people I was an atheist. I forgot that I used to pray on steps to courthouses. Atheists don't pray on steps to courthouses. Confused agnostic, I think it was. And anyway, an old member, Carl, said to me, he said, "Lenny, the time comes in everyone's recovery through death or relationship breakup or other major traumas, you're going to need more than just going to meetings." And I thought I'd be different. And 3 years, 11 months sober, a broken relationship, I hit a rock bottom, and I had a choice, picking up a drink or doing something about this program. It was as simple as that. And then I got myself a sponsor. And he said, "We're going to do the Alcoholics Anonymous program, not Lenny's program." There's a difference of 11 and a half steps in between the two programs. The big book's written in black and white. We're only going to read the black bits. And so that's that's when things changed for me. And I've been involved in AA all the way through. I met my wife not long after that. We met in AA and we had 43 years together. She passed away 3 years ago last week. And I still find it hard. I used to cry watching Little House on the Prairie. That's how emotional I am. And the grieving side's been hard for me. And I tell you what's helped me through it. I reckon one of the greatest things to come into AA, to help AA, is Zoom meetings. I do 4 face-to-face meetings a week. And when I miss my wife, I'll hop on a Zoom meeting at night. I love a lot of the Sydney Zoom meetings I hop on, and I'm meeting people coming up to me. I know you from Zoom and that. And my wife and I, we had a really good relationship. And our little boy died at birth. Didn't have to pick up a drink. My daughter was born with cerebral palsy. Didn't have to pick up a drink. And old Wharfie in Newcastle, Bob, used to say, even if your arse drops off, you don't pick up a drink. Right? We've got to go to any length. So this program works and it continues to work. And I'll be 51 years sober in a couple of weeks' time and I still say, did you have to open your big mouth up and put your foot in it again? A bloke called Shearer Jack from out Lightning Ridgeway, he says, the only people who don't make mistakes are vegetables that sit around and do nothing. You're going to be involved in life, you're going to make mistakes. He said, but the good thing about the Alcoholics Anonymous, you can learn from your own mistakes and you can learn from the experience of others. So I'm in the right place. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lenny.
We'd like to call Jan from WA, followed by Kel from Brisbane, if you'd like to wait in the wings.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Jan, I'm an alcoholic, and I belong to Scarborough Saturday Night Candlelight Group in WA. When you come to WA, we're 6 blocks from Scarborough Beach, you're all welcome to visit. It's a popular go-to place. It's not for nightclubs and clubs on Scarborough Beach, it's our meeting. And I have a debt of gratitude to them because they put up with my cranky, grumpy, difficult, moody nature from time to time, but they love the smiles and the hugs. You get hugs when you come to Candlelight. But I was a very ungrateful alcoholic, which is a surprise to you all. I was brought up in an alcoholic home. I'm the daughter, the granddaughter and the great-granddaughter of alcoholics. And I didn't know that alcoholism was a disease, but I knew that drinking destroyed our family and our lives. And I lived in a tiny country town out in Western New South Wales, and life was miserable. And I was never going to drink and be like them, and I woke up that beer was the problem, so I was never going to drink beer. But behind the woolshed dance, my brothers and cousins fed me and my sister blackcurrant nip. I didn't know it was alcohol, I thought it was cordial. But I got very drunk and I had to throw me in the back of Hilton, drive me home, hose me down and put me to bed, because if my stepfather had come out and found us, the boys giving us girls drink, he would have beaten them all up. And he was violent, he beat my mother up and he beat us up. So my life was characterised by being beaten up, having welts, going to school and being taken away by the police and welfare to another temporary foster home. So by 14 and a half, I refused to go back. And when I was 16, I left that country town. I had 3 goals. I would never go back to Narromine, I would never marry a farm labourer, and I would never, ever, ever drink beer. And I achieved all those goals in my life. However, I got a job in the PMG in the GPO in Sydney, and by then in the country town I discovered sherry in the ladies' liquor cabinets when I minded their children after school. I didn't know sherry was alcohol, had no alcohol label on it. But I'd already started it. I liked the feeling when I had this sherry. And when I got to Sydney, the girls used to, as shift work, after shift, go down to one of the pubs and have a few drinks, or at lunchtime go to one of the pubs. And I went with them and I found sherry. And so that culminated in, I never drank beer, but the sherry was the killer. And so I ended up going to other states. I was a geographical person and a runner. If there's a problem, I ran. I went through flats. So at 24 and a half, my sobriety date is the 6th of February 1969. And Alan and I have known each other since then. Because my mother got sober in 1964. I'm in Perth, they're in Sydney. My sister wrote to me and said, our mother has stopped drinking and has gone to this AA. Will you please talk to her? I hadn't talked to her for 2 years. I didn't talk to any of my family. I cut off. Being a great, ungrateful, resentful, angry aunt, she wrote me a letter. So I wrote the letter back when she said, please speak to Mum, she misses you. I said, hell will freeze over before I ever speak to that woman again. So I wasn't very happy. And then she wrote a couple of months later saying, our mother was going to have, I'm one of 7 children, Irish. We like stories, the Irish, we have lots of children. She wrote and said, our mother's still going to AA and she wants to say sorry for the childhood. Will you come to the barbecue? No alcohol's allowed at the barbecue. And I thought about it, so I did. I got sucked in, went back to Sydney, lined up at the barbecue, got the apology. 3 months later, fell out with her and didn't talk to her for 5 years because I went on my pathway of whatever. And by the time I made AA in February, 16th of February 1969, I'd been sacked out of 26 jobs. I was left my second husband for the 7th time, and I'm back in Sydney with the girls. And they got sick and tired. I was supposed to work and put in for the rent, but what I did was I'd go down the pub at Bondi Junction and I'd gather people up and bring them back for the party. And when they were going to be evicted, they heard 2 resentments on my mother and on AA. So they rang the Central Service Office. It was in the phone book. It was very modern in those days. And AA gave them 3 choices, said, send her back to the husband, put her out in the street, or take her to AA. No negotiation was allowed. The soft option was go to AA. So they took me to Bondi meeting. And so I want to thank anyone who's here who was in that original Bondi Juk for your kindness and patience to me, because I would end up in the kitchen. I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I wanted to find the people who had 3 wines and could be nice to people and didn't get sacked and didn't get people being moody on them. They were kind to me. I'd go out in the kitchen. I washed many a dish. I would sweep floors. I wouldn't talk to people. I wouldn't share because I was never going to tell anyone anything I did. Nothing in my life was secret. However, AA is like going into the surf. Oh, and I was a surfy girl in the 60s and 70s. I was fighting it out on the beaches with the boys for have a surf on the wave. They were mean to us too. I just wanted to be happy and just go surfing and do what I wanted to do. But life, when you're not working, doesn't work like that. So life went on, and the people on Bondi and the ladies scooped me up, and they looked after me. They took me to meetings, they took me home, they looked after me. Life got better. But it took a while for me to embrace a higher power, 12 steps, 12 tradition, never heard of a concept. In those days, there were no mobile phones, so if I wanted to ring someone up, I'd have to go up the phone box at 10 o'clock at night and put coins in it to make a phone call. And if you didn't have enough coins, it cut you off. I got sober, I often think, despite myself. But the members were kind. They told me that if I didn't put the steps in my life, if I didn't find a higher power, if I didn't start being nice to people, do a bit of service and get a sponsee, nothing would change. I would just have a string of husbands, because my mother had 4. One of my brothers had 6 wives. My sister had 4 husbands. You know, we weren't good, sustainable people, you know. But 2 things helped me in sobriety. I wanted answers on my upbringing, and so I went and became a community worker. What else do you do? I got a job with child welfare. What else do you do? And so, and combining that with AA, my life became very interesting. And one of the big things that shaped my service and my life was one of my sponsees had a much more difficult life than me, and we related and we got on, and she asked me to be a sponsor and I was sponsoring her. And everything was going well. However, she kept on busting. And on the fourth bust, I get a phone call late at night by the department transferred me out to the country because I was a good worker, because I'm sober and I'm on a program and I'm doing service and I've got a home group. Auburn Monday night then was my home group. And I thank all the members of Auburn, they were all lovely and were kind to me. And so I get a phone call from the police saying, we're going to charge your friend with murder, and she won't speak to us. She wants you to be the witness in the interview. They got to interview her. So I took a deep breath. I said, it can't be me. I know her. She won't talk to us. She won't talk to anyone, and we're worried about her mental state, and she's very, very drunk. I said, well, give her a shower and feed her and put her to bed, and then we'll talk about this tomorrow morning. They said, if you don't come now, we transfer her down to Newcastle. So what do? Drive 7 hours up the highway, land in at 3 o'clock in the morning or something or other, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I sat in on an interview. They hadn't given her a shower. Anyway, she got found guilty of murder, but by then I was going to the women's group just down the road here and saying, she didn't do it, it's impossible. Give her a chance, And so they helped me. They helped do an appeal, and I became involved with the prison group. She ended up in Silverwater. She ended up in the prison group. I ended up on the roster for 7 years. And 6 years later, she was acquitted on an appeal. And it was the ladies in AA who helped with me with information about her, helped it out. But it got me involved in service, and I've done service ever since. And I'm here now, and I love conventions, and I've done every convention I can for years. I've been on 6 convention committees, 2 in New South Wales, 4 in West Australia. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to all the people I know here, friends, family, hung about with you, the Kiwi friends at the front. I love you all, and life gets better. But not picking up the first drink and picking up the phone, but now we have mobiles, makes life better.
Thank you, Jan. And while Cal from Brisbane comes to the microphone, can we have Denise from Mona Vale come to the stage, please?
Am I right?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Hi everybody, Cal, alcoholic, and Red Hill Promises is my home group, Brisbane. I arrived on the 20th of May 1982, not knowing who I was really, be quite honest with you. I drank for 27 years, and I come from a long line of alcoholics. I was born in Dublin, so the chances of being anything but Irish Catholic and alcoholic were pretty slim. And but I didn't know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I woke up in March of 1982 to find out I didn't have a wife and 3 children, and that was after many warnings, none of which I heeded. And how I got here was simple. The lady next door, who I couldn't stand, came through, and I'd been trying to stop for about 3 months. The marriage was on and off, and I found I couldn't. I thought it was going to be easy, and Betty came through, and I was in the study, which was really my bar, and I had the courage to stick her head round the bar door, and she said, Kel, it's very commendable what you're trying to stop. She said, but there is help if you wish. And with that, she was gone. And it took me a whole week to pluck up enough courage to knock on her door and say, what were you talking about? And a slip of paper, Kevin, and a telephone number. And I said, what's it about? And she said, can't tell you anymore, ring Kevin. And of course it was Alcoholics Anonymous, and Kevin said, I can get you to a meeting. And I stalled for another week, on and off, always an excuse, but eventually made my way to what was then the inaugural Friday night meeting. That was my first AA meeting, and I thought I was a perfectionist. I got there 20 minutes early because if I'd been there any later, you know, and I didn't want to go in. It was a lovely little church hall, and the lights were shining, and I was sat up the back of the car park there, and the strange thing about not wanting to go in there, 500 metres, 600 metres up the hill was the Yardley Arms, which happened to be my favourite pub. That was the AA before AA, and you know, I've been thrown out of there, crawled out of there, and the rest of it, and it never worried me. But getting out of the car to get into that meeting, and I don't know how, but right on 8 o'clock, something picked me up and transferred me in there, and a lovely lady came across that wooden floor, and she said, the meeting's just about to start. And I said, look, my name, I give her my full name, and she said, you don't have to use your full name here, Kel, if you don't wish. And I didn't even know at that stage, I didn't know the meaning, I don't think, of the word anonymity, but that's what she was practicing. And she sat me down and she said, look, after the meeting, if you have any questions and the rest of it, or if you want tea or coffee, and she explained, and she sat down and she was chairing the meeting, and it was going on okay. And then suddenly she asked a gentleman called Raucous Dick to share. And Raucous was the thumper, and then into his very loud. They didn't call him Raucous because he had a quiet voice. And not only me did I sit up, but everybody in the bloody hall did, you know. And I thought, I knew this would be a religious mob, just knew it. And because he reminded me of the Reverend Ian Paisley, you know? and he happened to be on the top of my hit list, and and yet that same gentleman, you know, sat one-on-one, was a much quieter. He sat on this. There's 3 steps that led into there was an arch into that church hall. I called it the Golden Arch, before the other Golden Arch started up. He'd sit into the early hours of the morning, trying to talk to the mad Irishman, as he called me. Some sense into me, and I just kept coming back. The thing that appealed me most to anything in Brisbane, in that nearly every meeting you went to, it had the word hope up on the table, and that's what I felt more than anything. There was hope here. I desperately didn't want to drink again. You know, my father had died, and we'd emigrated from Ireland to England when I was a 10-year-old. And he died in a halfway house for alcoholic men in the north of England. And his brother Joe had died at 40 years old, a derelict in Phoenix Park in Dublin. And, you know, the family was badly affected by it. And I didn't want to become one of them. And yet I had. As much as I denied it, I had. But it took AA for me to wake me up that I'd become just as bad, but there was hope. There was hope here, and God, I'm glad. There was a photograph that was shown during the wonderful history we were shown, and it was a group photograph. That group photograph, in actual fact, was taken in the Friends of Catholic women in Elizabeth Street in Brisbane in 1953. And the guy sat on the second row, not that you recognise it now, but he became my second sponsor, a guy called Arthur T., a wonderful, beautiful gentleman and very gentle gentleman, and he didn't live too far from me, and it was Arthur who took this guy that arriving in AA, a card-carrying atheist, you know, gently took me through 12 steps, introduced me to 12 traditions, and little bit by little bit, I learned to, because of Jan and I were on the board together, and obviously I had to eventually learn the concepts and the rest of it. People have talked about the steps, about the service, and you know, this one. What we've got here is it's more than a fellowship. You know, it not only saves lives. We've got the greatest. How can you call it? What can you call it? It's hard to describe, but there's nothing like it else in the world. It gives us all the freedom in the world, and yet saves each and every one of us our lives, you know, and the lives around us. The lives around us. Time, gentlemen, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Cal. And as Denise comes to the microphone, could Brewery Bill come to the front of the room, please?
Introduce Denise.
I did. I said as Denise comes. Thanks, Denise.
Hi. Thank you, everyone. I'm Denise, and I'm an alcoholic. And I feel like a bit of a fraud because I'm not turning 40 for another 10 days. But but it's still the month of April. So anyway, I've really enjoyed the convention, and this morning's presentation was just magic. And Lillian Roth played a big part in that. And when I was a kid and a young teenager, I would escape. I just loved to escape reality, and one way of that was reading, and the other one was watching movies. And I used to love watching old black and white movies. And I remember seeing one called I'll Cry Tomorrow, which was about Lillian Roth, who was an alcoholic and got sober in AA. And I was fascinated, you know. And what fascinated me was they showed how much fun she was having before she got really bad. And then I loved a movie called The Days of Wine and Roses with Jack Lemmon and Lee Remick. And again, they showed the glamour and the fun of alcoholic, you know, and I was just fascinated. And I watched my parents weren't big drinkers, but I've got aunts and uncles who were, and I remember just thinking, oh, I can't wait to get hold of some of this. And then when I grew up in America, and when I was in year 12 in high school, I went to a Catholic school and we did a retreat. And one night we had 3 AA members come and speak. They told their stories, and I identified, and I'd only been drunk 1 or 2 times at that point, but I knew exactly how they felt. And they all smoked, I mean, this is back in 1968, and they all smoked menthol cigarettes, and I smoked menthol cigarettes, and I thought, oh my God, I must be an alcoholic. And anyway, fast forward, you know, about 16 years, and I was married, I had a little girl, and I started drinking at 17, and it gradually progressed. You know, it's not enough time to tell the whole story, but by 1983, I knew I had a bit of a problem, and a friend of mine actually came around with this blue book, and you know, she said, you know, I've been going to AA. I think you might be an alcoholic. You know, would you like to come to a meeting? And I picked up the book, and I knew about AA because of you know the movies and the school I went to, but I just picked up the book and I saw the word God, and it's not like I was an atheist or an agnostic, but me and God sort of just parted ways. And anyway, it wasn't long after that friend of mine died. She just collapsed in her backyard, and she was 38 years old, and that was a result, from her drug and alcohol addictions. And then that was the turning point in my drinking, because the progression that was quite slow in the first 16 years was very, very fast in the last 2 years. And I knew I had a problem, but I thought, well, my friend told me I needed to go to AA, but I certainly wasn't ready. But I started looking into the spiritual side of things, so I would go along to past life regressions, float tanks, meditation courses. I read all the self-help books, Louise Hay and Shakti Gawain and all those. And it all wasn't, it was all actually really good stuff, but at the same time, my drinking was progressing at the rate of knots. And I always lived in a fantasy world, but I got to the point where I just couldn't separate fantasy from reality, and that was a bit scary, actually. And just, by a series of coincidences, which I put down to my higher power working in my life, I met someone who was a member of AA, and he had literature with him. And I looked at this little booklet that had all the questions, and I thought, oh my God, that's... I knew I had to concede to my innermost self at that point. I could feel it viscerally in my body that I was an alcoholic. And I went along to my first meeting a few days after that. And then I went to my second meeting, which was Neutral Bay on a Saturday night. And I met people there who I felt like were my tribe, and a few of them are here tonight. This afternoon. So it's just wonderful that I've kept those connections. And anyway, and that was in April 1985, and I'm still here, which is a miracle. And I'm just ever so grateful that I found AA when I did, and I found a higher power. Which I really don't understand, but I know that it is in AA, and it's in every meeting I go to, and I find it in nature, and yeah, it's just been a wonderful experience. I've had a few. You don't stay sober for decades without coming across a few bumps in the road, and I've had a few, and I've had a few emotional rock bottoms, and some difficult things, but I stayed sober a day at a time, and I used to say, and going back to my first year, around the 9-month mark, I really struggled, and the restless irritability and discontent had really kicked in, and I was came very close to picking up a drink, and someone suggested to me that I see Jim McLean at Langton Clinic, which I did as an outpatient. And from there, I think I did the first step I've actually really took the first step at that point, and then it just progressed from there with the program. So I'm very grateful to be here, and thank you so much for the people who've put this on, and I look forward to the rest of the weekend. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. And Bill, welcome, Bill. And
Can we ask Paula from the Old Timers Las Vegas group to wait in the wings, please?
Good afternoon. I'm Bill. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a member of the Edgecliff group, which I have been a member of for over 51 years of the over 53 years I've been sober. And I'm 81 years young. And I'm not a stranger to this stage because I've sung from it, and the acoustics are still terrible. And move them up, right, done. So, yes, I was an anxious kid. I was a bush kid. I come from a family of 8, and no, we weren't Catholic. And my father had been born in 1895 on the goldfields of Victoria, and my eldest sister was an army nurse in the Second World War when I was born. I was an accident at birth, and it was not a happy house, is about the best way I could put it. My father had been a frontline soldier on the Western Front for 3 years and had untreated what they call PTSD now all his life. That's about the best way I could describe it, and we moved a lot. So when I found alcohol, I found the panacea to all ill. In 1955, I won a scholarship to leave the bush and come to Sydney to study music, and for 6 years I studied music in that cathedral next door. And I had never been into a church. All I'd ever sung up at that stage was Queensland Opera, which is currently known as country and western music. And I then started studying in here, and within 12 months I was singing in Latin. So there was a bit of a strange, for a kid that had never been into a bush church, I was suddenly surrounded by archbishops and bishops, and it was all very strange. But anyhow, I went on my journey, and at 17 I was anointed by a bloke who told me I had a huge future in music. Without going into all the highways and byways, and there were plenty of them. In the beginning it was dinner suits. At 24 I was sitting in a doorway in Melbourne drinking whiskey trying to cure pneumonia. And another citizen of the sidewalk, as old Jack from the Cross used to call him, rescued me from a doorway. He was going better than I had. He had a room, and I spent 10 days on the floor of his room before I could get to a doctor, because every time I stood up it was like somebody had shoved needles in my lungs. And got to this doctor, and I said, a mate's been looking after me. He said, what's he done for you? I said, he's been getting me bottles of whiskey and hamburgers. And the horrified look was, he said, mate, you should be dead. And I still had a few years to go. And I won't go into the highways and byways, there are plenty of them. You know, it's just unending. But by 1971, I was now drinking 2 to 3 bottles of scotch a day. I was eating handfuls of Valium. I was now employed by a brewery in Sydney. I won't say I was working for one. The Vietnam War was on, and there was a manpower shortage. Even a lunatic could get a job. And I was a 5-day-a-week worker who would get paid on Thursday and turn up on Tuesday. And in the end, I was 13.5 stone with malnutrition, delirium tremens. I could no longer get on buses, trains, ferries or anything without having a panic attack. I had insects running all over me, or there were voices talking to me. I could smell leaking gas, and I was vomiting blood. And at 27, that was a successful end to a terrific drinking career. And I got strapped down to the hospital bed in the DTs, and a bloke in the bed next to me who'd been unstrapped, I'd been tied up for a week, asked me what I was in there for. I said, I'm in there because I'm insane, because I still didn't know it was the drink. And he politely said to me, no, you're in here because you're a raging pisspot, mate. And you're a chronic alcoholic and you need to get to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a member of AA. I'd never met an AA member, and they'd done this bloke had just been unstrapped out of the bed next to me. And I'm escaping out the window tonight. Do you want to come with me to an AA meeting? And I said, I don't think so. And anyhow, he was gone, and the next day I was let loose, and I had nerves like violin strings, which went on for ages. I shook like a leaf. I had a psychiatrist who didn't believe in handing you tablets. They force-dried me, and he said, you can smoke your head off. I don't care how much you smoke. I'm not interested in your lungs. And I was a 60-a-day smoker. And I was going around that place, and I picked up a 1971 Reviver, and I've still got it. And 20 questions. The first one, does drinking make you forget periods of time? Well, I went to a jazz party in Sydney once, and I woke up 9 days later in a house in Kew in Melbourne full of dwarfs, and I thought I was still in Sydney. That's dead set serious. A bloke, I was lying on a bed, and a bloke next to me said, do you want something to eat? I thought he was in bed with me. And he was standing on the floor. Anyhow, so at the bottom of it, out of 20 questions, I had 17 yeses, 1 probable yes, and 2 definite no's. And without knowing it, it was my first foray into honesty. And the third section said, if you've answered yes, in italics, 23 of these questions, you're definitely alcoholic. And for the first time in my life, the light went on. And I went, it's the bloody drink. And the only thing that has instantly ever happened to me was I instantly didn't want to drink. And they didn't muck around in those days. That most of the rehabs and whatever were being reserved for the Yanks from Vietnam. So we weren't, the local lunatics fell through the cracks. And so they discharged me out of there after I had been escorted into a few AA meetings with the ringing endorsement from the psychiatrist of, you've been exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous, now it's get up or die. And out you went. And all I had in the world was 2 Qantas overnight bags with my worldly possessions, mad women chasing me, because when you're really sick, you only attract really crazy people. And I was still hallucinating, and I had no money and nowhere to live. I moved into a room in Surrey Hills, and Broken Hill Jack told me, if you've got a job, son, by the way, Buster Fidesz was at my first meeting, and he came up to me afterwards and said, stick with us, son. I was looking at those photos thinking, I knew all those people. I must be getting bloody older. So anyhow, I left there and I found a room to live in Surrey Hills, had a kettle of toaster and a bed, and you could hear people vomiting through the walls all night. And I lived in that room for 18 months, and I was working back in the brewery because Broken Hill Jack had told me to go back and get a job. And it was the only job I knew. And for the first 2.5 years I was sober, I was surrounded by thousands of gallons of booze every day of the week. It's not bravado. I understood that first step, and believe you me, the first one you got to get. That one you have to get, and I really understood for the first time in my life. My life wasn't unmanageable, it was chaos. And I was very fortunate. I got sober at the time when Minogue grabbed me in 74 and said, I've never seen an alcoholic in AA start to achieve emotional stability in under 3 years. It'll take longer than 5. He could see I was still barking mad at 3 years. I remember saying to a bloke called Lenny Wales. I said, Lenny, I don't know if this is going to work, mate. I don't believe in God. He said, listen, Bill, Alcoholics Anonymous works for people who believe in God, it works for people who don't believe in God, and it works for people who think they are God, so there's room for you. So they always just took the little excuses you had away from you all the time. The Yanks used to say 5 years to find your marbles and 10 years to play with them. It took me nearly 5 years to finally intuitively begin to understand why I could never understand what living a day at a time meant, because I could never be in it. And it took me nearly 5 years before one day I just decided, instead of trying to make the day fit me, just fit yourself to the damn day. Well, very hard. If you're new in sobriety, let me tell you, if you hear anybody tells you it's easy, get away from them. It's not easy. If you've never lived in reality and you're now living in it 24 hours a day with no form of escape whatsoever, it's difficult. Be prepared to look up with a fair amount of emotional and physical discomfort in early sobriety, because it's hard. I was fortunate. I sat with Russ Jones out at his place and listened to Russ. Archie McKinnon was a big player in my life. There was hardly a photo up there I didn't damn well know. I'm thinking, man, how long have I been around here? So you're the people who showed me on the 10th of June 1971 it was possible not only to get sober and stay sober, but also to reinforce in me the fact you're here today and you're not escaping out the door. The fact you're here today, you're reinforcing me the fact you can be happy about being sober, and for that I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And as Paula comes to the microphone,
could we have coming up in the wings, Eric from Terrigal, please?
Hello, my name is Paula and I'm an alcoholic. My home group is actually Cromer on Wednesday night on the Northern Beaches. The Las Vegas double-digit Zoom meeting is my husband's home group, who volunteered me to get up here today. I had no idea until my name was called out. Anyhow, it's wonderful to be here. I loved this morning the presentation on the history of AA. I learnt a lot. I continue to learn a lot. My sobriety date, I'm a baby. You think Denise is young? I'm a fraud. 4th of June 1988, which means I'm coming up for 37 years. I was 39, slightly before my 39th birthday, when I found my way into AA and had run out of options. 18 months before I came into AA, I'd seen psychiatrists, tarot code readers, jewellery readers, the whole lot. And the jewellery reader was the one who came closest to telling me what was wrong with me, which is strange, but it's true. And there was one person my psychiatrist sent me to who was supposedly an expert on drug and alcohol. And I said, why are you sending me there? She said, just go along. And I walked in and I tried to negotiate with him to lock me away because my life had become panic attacks, fear. I was totally overwhelmed by fear. And I had in my mind some lovely sanitarium, tennis courts, green lawns and all that stuff. And he sat there and he looked at me and he said, you're not going insane. He said, though you are a little bit. He said, you're an alcoholic. I said, I won't tell you what I said. Something like, no, I am not. And because my father was, and I'd spent my life trying not to be like my father and done a pretty good job of it, I thought. And he said, no, he said, you are an alcoholic and you need to go to AA. And I said some words to him and walked out, and that was kind of that. But 18 months later, I found myself down on my knees in my living room, and I just said, God help me, I can't do this anymore. And, I needed a lot of help to see how my life had run and where I'd been taken care of. And it was in one of those moments, my friend knocked on the door, unexpected, walked in and said, sit down, shut up, I have something to say to you. And she told me that my friends had had a meeting and they were no longer prepared to sit around and watch me kill myself, and what could we do? And someone mentioned this before, but we got out the yellow pages. 1988 was pretty big, and she and I went through the yellow pages because I said, someone said something about AA, and she said, what is it? I said, I have no idea. So we were going through the yellow pages, eventually came across this thing, we worked out what it was, went down to Chinatown, got pissed to celebrate the fact that maybe I had a drinking problem. And I got a train. What I didn't realise and needed to be pointed out to me, but that night I got down on my knees, the physical compulsion and the mental obsession was removed from me. And I didn't recognise that. But a week later I got on a train and I went to AA Central Office and I met a lady who gave me the questionnaire, and I got most of them right, and she said, you need to go to AA or you're going to die. And that was it, you're going to die. So my non-alcoholic friend and I went to a meeting. She escorted me in. She had me by the arm. It was raining. I changed my mind. She said, no way. We went into the AA meeting. And something happened in that room. A woman stood up and described panic attacks, and they'd become so much part of my life, and it was terrifying. And another man stood up and said, in my life, I've never felt equal to anyone. I've always felt superior or inferior, and I knew exactly what it was for, both of them. And I believe that they were my God-given hooks, And I walked out and my friend said, what are you going to do? And I said, I've got to go back. I know I've got to come back. And fortunately for me, the next day she went to work. And again, this power in my life. And one of her colleagues said, did you do anything interesting on the weekend? And the non-alcoholic said, I had a fabulous time. I went to an AA meeting. And I didn't do that, trust me. And the colleague said, oh, and she closed the office door and she said, I would like to meet your friend. She said, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober 6 years. You can't help her. I believe I can. And that woman became my first sponsor, and her name was Beverly. And I'm here today because of her and a number of other women who have helped me along the way, and a number of men, actually. And she said to me, the most important word in these steps is that first word in the first step, and it's we, because you have been a me, my, I. And she said, we need to show you how to be a we and a sober woman. And she started to do that. But, about 6 months, I started to feel, and there was a lot of stuff from my childhood, and it terrified me. And she kept saying, just let us hold on to you, just let us hold on to you. And I heard someone say in a meeting, I did the fourth and fifth step, and my life changed. And so I went to her and I said, Beverly, I want to do the fourth and fifth step. And she said, no. And I said, why not? She said, because there are 3 in front of it and you haven't done them. So I thought about it, and the next day I phoned her and I said, "You no longer have what I want," clonk, and fine. And I found someone who allowed me to do that. And at 1 year in this program, people had come around to help me celebrate my first year in sobriety. And I stood on the balcony 11 floors up, and I have never come so close to suicide in my life, because I'd opened up cans of worms, and that person that had worked with me had left the country, had gone on holiday, and I was in so much pain. And I was very fortunate, again, someone was sitting inside. One of the women looked out, saw me. She came up to the door and she said, "Paula," she said, "why don't you come in and join us?" and held out a hand. And I knew, it got through to me then that it wasn't just going into that room. And I walked into that room, and again that night I got down on my knees and said to God, "Whatever, whatever." And that woman came back from overseas, said, "You're too sick, I can't deal with you." And so I made that phone call back to Beverly. And I started to become the wee person, because I knew what step 1 was about. I knew what step 2 was about, because on that balcony I'd experienced it totally. I had no doubt. And so she and I began to work, and we worked through the program, and she showed me how to bring it into my life. And do you know, I'm here because of I had some wonderful women in my life, sponsors, and some men who've taken care of me in early sobriety. I went to the United States when I was 6 years sober, and I found a lady called Joy. And she saw my performance in a group conscience. I was very combative, apparently. And when I walked out, she said to me, "You don't know anything about the traditions, do you?" I went, "No." She said, "Okay, that's my job." And so she walked me and taught me the traditions. And you know, I now have the same sponsor. I've had it for 25 years. When I went to the other side of America, she was there, and she recognised that expectations were a problem. So Lisa and I began to work on that. And I've been carried through this program for so long, carried. And but I've also, carried by a lot of humour. If those people hadn't laughed at my first meeting, I wouldn't be here today. I know that. And Jack and I, we were travelling through the United States in a motorhome. We'd been together 24 hours a day for months without a break. And we got up to the Dakotas in the Badlands, and I had a saucepan in my hand, and I knew I was going to kill him. He didn't know, I knew. And I got in our little car and I drove into town, and I phoned my sponsor and I said, "I'm going to kill him." She said, "Where are you?" I said, "Out in the Badlands." And she said, "Paula, I've been to the Badlands." She said, "Let me make a suggestion." She said, "You will never be able to dig a deep enough grave. The ground is so hard." And she said, and for me, I went, "Oh." And she said, "Where are you going next?" And I said, "Wisconsin, Minnesota." She said, "Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, it's very soft. Why don't you wait till you get there? Call me." So I got to Minnesota. The saucepan had been put away, of course, but I was able to call her and laugh. I'm so blessed to have found this program. I really am. I married someone in this program who's going to cop a hell of a whack when we leave for volunteering me. But I never thought I'd get married. God had other ideas, and soon we'll celebrate 29 years of marriage. It's a miracle. My sobriety is a miracle. My relationships are a miracle. And thank you all for sharing your sobriety with me. Thank you.
We have invite Eric from Terrigal, and if Julie M could come and stand in the wings, please.
Thanks very much. Hi everybody, my name's Eric, I'm an alcoholic. Are we having fun? Yes! I'm pleased to be here, I'm pleased to be sober. And I'm in AA, I'm not at AA. Hence, my sobriety date's the 15th of December, 1978. And this is indeed a privilege, because I'm at that high-risk age. Just staying alive is a big deal. But I love life today, and I love sobriety, and I love all of you. There's a big crowd, a lot of you. Shortly after, I don't even remember exactly now, it's so long ago, but shortly after the 15th of December, I'm in the there's friends here from New Zealand. I got sober there. I'm a New Zealander living in Australia, and they like me here now, which is just great. But I was sitting in a 24-hour club in Auckland, depressed. I'd been coming to AA for 7 years, and still relapsing, couldn't grasp the full nature of my condition. In other words, I couldn't fully conceive to myself. And I'm sitting there and I couldn't look at anybody. I thought I knew what AA was all about. And I'm looking down at the ground, and somebody, I presume it was an old timer, I don't know, as I say, because I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look up. And he said, "Stick close to AA, Eric." He knew me, and he said, "Stick close to AA," and I got him. You know how we hear things when we hear them, and we see when we see? And I've done that ever since. And that's why I say, I'm not just at the convention or just at AA, I'm in AA. This has, well, AA's always said, but I haven't always heard it, is that this becomes, if you put these steps in your life, it becomes a way of living. So I don't have to go drinking if I don't want to, and I can be happy. And everybody knows me, knows I'm happy. I'm still crazy, but I'm happy. Happy crazy. But no, it's very good. Actually, I want to do something a little different if you allow me. And I'd like to ask my friend Rosina to stand up. Rosina's a special person in my life. We're both 46 years sober. And the reason I asked Rosina to do it is her dad was my first sponsor, and if he was alive today, he'd be 49 years sober. I mean, how impossible is that? What are the odds of that? And so, I really am. I write a gratitude list every day, something I like to do, and as I'm an alcoholic, sometimes when I wake up, my mind's already awake. It says, "Good, I want to talk to you." And so I generally do it first thing as soon as I open my eyes, and I write down 10 things. I try not to repeat myself if I can help it. And what it does, of course, is it sets me up for the most positive attitude or most positive frame of mind I can have every day. Every day. And so I really have a bad day. And the only time I have a bad day is if I'm resisting, dealing with whatever comes up. And when I don't like being disturbed today, and then that first sponsor of mine, he gave up on asking me what the problem was when he first started to sponsor me, because I'd entertain him, to capture him, and I'd go on and on about how unfair it was, and how difficult life. And he gave up on it because I wasn't asking him for help. And eventually he just used to, sometimes I could never catch him. He'd do it when I least expected. He'd say, "Misery's optional, Eric." He'd get up right close to me, "Misery's optional." So possibly a good thing, because I may have headbutted him. He just used to make me so mad, because if he could just give me 5 more minutes to explain myself, he'd agree with me, but he never did. And of course, why I thought of him when I was asked to do this is that he eventually was able to show me, how unmanageable my life is, because I couldn't see that, and I didn't know at the time, but I couldn't be honest with myself. And eventually today I can be honest with myself. It's like it just comes natural, like it should do. And so I'll be eternally grateful to him. He also introduced, he sponsors another, I beg your pardon, he used to sponsor, when he was alive, a number of people who are here, and he brought the model of from the Pacific group and started meetings both in New Zealand and over here. I've been fortunate to be part of that. And, and today, I just love sobriety, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't get any sleep last night, and I'm tired. I'm not nervous, I'm just cold. Are any of you cold? No. But I'm not about to complain. I would call it complaining. He used to call it whining. And when I used to say to him, it's so unfair, he'd say, Eric, if you want fear, you've got to go to the Easter show. That's me. I'm done. This has indeed been a privilege to do this. Privilege. Yeah. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Love all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Julie M is not here today, but is Diane from Woolwich here? Who? She's gone. Oh, okay. All right then. Can we have Vince from Charlestown? Followed by a lady from New Zealand who's got 50 years up, I believe. So please come up in the wings.
G'day. Vince is my name and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi.
From the Freedom Group of Charlestown. We meet at Charlestown Library Fridays at 5:30 and my sobriety date is the 23rd of March 1971. So to save you doing the mathematics, I've done them before. That's 54 years and 4 weeks. So, yeah. And it's only by the grace of God I'm here today. They mentioned Gordon earlier on. Dick mentioned Gordon, I'm not sure where he is. And Dick was in the... when I went to Charlestown Group, Dick was there. I think he was about 3 or 4 years sober. And he'd been a big influence in my life. We went to Tamworth when I was about 4 years sober. Met Father Ted, Des from Tamworth. And that's where I got the idea that service was so important in my sobriety. They were starting an area up, Area A, Eastern Region, and so Des and I went. There was, you talk about some bloke who was real big, there was this bloke called Wolf. He was nearly 7 foot tall, and he was fairly big, and he'd jump in your car, and it would go down on the left-hand side. Depends which side he got on. But we went over there and met Gordon and his wife and his daughter. And later on I was to hear some of the work that Gordon did. There was a bloke also who's been very important in my life. That was the late John R. John went to Canberra, and then he come to Newcastle, and I don't know whether he bought over a couple of Americans, but I remember Lenny and we were struggling with the steps at that stage, and they had these sheets of the steps, and I was in the photocopying business, so I managed to run a few off. But not only that, I was able to do the steps, and that's where recovery come in my life. My wife's not here today, but we've celebrated 57 years of marriage, and that's what AA does to you. It really cements things. We've only got 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. 2 of the boys are members of this fellowship, and I tell you what, it's been a tough life getting them, well, not getting them sober, but helping them to be sober. And through detoxes and, pretty rough sort of a business. But one of them sober 3 years and the other sober 2.5 years. So that's the grace of God working in my life. I'll finish on this, page 85 in the big book. It's easy to let up on a spiritual basis of action and rest on our laurels. We are in trouble if we do, for alcohol's a subtle foe. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So for me, that's where it starts and ends. My spiritual condition, to have a look at it each day. If it's down a bit, pick it up, and it's been very prominent in my life, so thank you.
Okay, for our final speaker is our guest from New Zealand.
Without fear of favouritism, we'll call a New Zealand speaker.
Hi, my name is Diana. I'm an alcoholic. Is that right? I bring you greetings from New Zealand. Congratulations, Australia. We're 1 year behind you. We will have our 80 years next year. Please come. Seeing that presentation this morning, it is so very similar with what happened in New Zealand. Our Ian McEwan, founder, wrote a letter to New York. They sent him a big book. The same has happened with your man McKinnon, is it? Yeah. And the stories of your states and cities starting, the little meetings, the little groups, the little gatherings, so much like has happened here, has happened at home. Eric, our first service together was Auckland Service Centre in about 1984 on that committee. I was 32 years old when I came in. My sobriety date's the 9th of September 1980. I thought my life was over. If I couldn't drink anymore, what did I do with my life? I had 2 little boys. And I remember saying to the people at my early AA meetings, what do I do when they have their weddings and their 21sts? And I can't toast them. That's shameful. And they said, how old are they? I said, they're 9 and 5. They said, it's not really today's problem. Well, we've had those weddings and 21sts, and they've had children in my sobriety. I did toast them. I really can't remember what I toasted them with, but I do know it wasn't alcohol. I have a 26-year-old grandson who was really heavy on the booze and drugs some couple of years ago, and I sat down with him. He's clean and sober. I told him my story. I hear his father, my eldest son, saying to his kids, to those grandchildren, now let's just stop and think. Let's sleep on it and just let's think what's the next right thing to do. And I think, there's our program, 3 generations down, and they don't even realise that. That's a real blessing, that my sobriety has rippled through the family. That's really important. That 5-year-old will have his 50th birthday tomorrow at home, and I won't be there. But he knows, my kids know, that they've had their lives to date different, better, happier and healthier because I'm sober. And it's okay that I'm not there. They'll be having a nice adult, happy time. with his 50th birthday, and that's fine. I can celebrate with them next week when I'm home. The thing is that AA is my lifestyle. It's not something that I do today, and I don't do step 1 in January and step 4 in April, and I live 12 steps each day. My life filters through the 12 steps. I've been taught to do that, and it works. It really, really works. I come with a group of friends. We try to come each year at Easter to your convention, but we make a little holiday of it and we have fun in sobriety. A couple of days ago, we spent the day at the Blue Mountains and rode all the rides. Doesn't matter how old you are. I'm 77 next month, and I rode that really steep train. I'm sober. I'm not meant to be unhappy and glum. I have fun. So thank you so much for such a wonderful event. Thank you for having us. And please do come in January, 3rd weekend, to our 80th year and to our convention. It happens every year, and it's summer holidays, and it's nice. There's flyers out there about it. We have a special kinship. I think we have a special kinship. We are a special family, and it's a privilege to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
Okay, we'll hand this back to Darren. I'm sorry it ran over. It's my fault. I thought it was 3:30, but it's been fun anyway, so thank you.
Thank you, Bev and John. And I was sitting there going, let's just have it run till midnight, because there's another 40 of you that we didn't get to. I'm sorry that we didn't get to you all. Thank you to Bev and John, also to Don and the other John. Anyone that didn't get to speak who is 40 years or more, we have a red leather-bound big book. We'd love you to sign it. One's going in the archives. There's actually 2. One's going in the archives and one's being auctioned tonight at the dinner dance. So please don't leave. Come and sign that book, those 2 books before you leave. The next meeting was due to start in 6 minutes. We'll have it start at 3:35 instead, so everyone's got 10 minutes to grab a water or a coffee or bathroom break. And as I said at the start of this meeting, I think we would all agree that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and we heard from lots of them today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for everything that you've done for my Alcoholics Anonymous before I arrived and after I arrived. You've loved me back to life, as well as thousands and thousands of others. So thank you. And I'll get Bev and John to close the meeting with the Serenity Prayer. We're back in here at 3:35.
All right. To the one who loves you the most. Lord,
grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know. Okay, come back.